Welcome to the group exhibit Hydrogen and Fuel Cells here on Hanover Fair 2013. This is the technical forum of the group exhibit, and we have presentations here which are going into technical detail. You're all invited to sit down, to have a drink, and to listen to what our next speaker is presenting. It's Stuart Erickson, the president of Ultrasonic Systems, and he's presenting to you the fuel cell manufacturing using Nozzle-Less Ultrasonic spray technology. So welcome on stage, Stuart.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending this seminar. My name is Stuart Erickson with Ultrasonic Systems, and I'm going to explain our nozzle-free, nozzle-less ultrasonic technology. So just a little background of our company. We were founded in 1989, and we started out in the electronics assembly industry, and we have thousands of automated spray coating equipment installed. We have over 60 machines installed for R&D, R&D and production for fuel cells. We developed our core technology is our nozzle-less ultrasonic technology, which I will go into detail about in this presentation. A little bit of a history. We started with spray fluxing for the electronics industry in the early 1990s. We developed our Prism product line about 10 years later, which is an XYZ coating system. And we've developed other coating systems for the solar industry and the fuel cell industry subsequently, including a benchtop version of our Prism system. Some of the applications that we have include fuel cell. We have equipment for the solar industry, electronics assembly, as I mentioned, the display industry for applying things like anti-smudge and anti-reflective coatings and photoresists, semiconductor packaging, applying conductive inks to components, photoresist to wafers, LED manufacture, medical, batteries, and other specialty coatings. So we have many different applications for our technology. With regard to fuel cell technology, we're primarily concerned with applying the catalyst to the electrolyte substrate. And that really means the anode and cathode layers. And these catalysts can be precious metal-based carbon type catalysts. They can also be ceramic slurries. They can be other proprietary materials. And the solids range can be anywhere from the low single-digit solids content all the way up to about 50%, depending on the material. For electrolyte substrates, we can spray on the Nafion membrane, on the carbon paper substrate, or onto bipolar metal plates and ceramic plates. Fuel cell coatings are essentially a material, a carrier solvent with particles that are in suspension. And these can be ceramic particles, they can also be precious metal, carbon-based particles, or other proprietary materials. In order to handle these materials, you have to keep the material mixed because suspension materials tend to fall out of suspension fairly quickly. So you need to have a mechanism to keep the material mixed for the coating process, as well as to be able to deliver the liquid to the spray device in a controlled way. What we're doing is we're applying this anode and cathode layer at a specific density to the substrate. And we can either apply it to a flexible membrane or to a metal type or ceramic plate. When we're dealing with a flexible type substrate, the substrate has to be fixtured and handled such that it remains flat during the coating process. We essentially need to apply a coating that is uniform and defect-free, and I'll go into more details about that later. And we also need to minimize coating material waste. There are several different spray technologies available. And the most simple one is a pressure nozzle, which is kind of like a spray bottle. It just has an orifice, and you deliver liquid through it, and the pressure drop causes it to spray. They generally produce a conical spray pattern, and they're low efficiency, so there's a lot of waste. They're also prone to clogging. Another technology is air atomizing nozzles, which is more like a paint gun. And in this technology, you're basically using pressurized air to generate the spray, and you're also using the pressurized air to shape the spray. This technology can apply a conical or an elliptical type pattern. It can make those two patterns. It still is low efficiency because you have air pressure that is making the spray and also shaping the spray, so those two parameters are linked together, so you tend to get a lot of bounce back. That technology is only maybe about 50 or 60% of actually what you spray ends up on the substrate. Then there's ultrasonic nozzle technology, which uses ultrasonic vibrations to create the spray, and it uses low pressure air to shape the spray. This technology also produces a conical or an elliptical pattern depending upon the spray shaping that's used. But this is a very high efficiency technology, so anywhere from 90 to 99% of what is sprayed with the ultrasonic nozzle will reach the substrate. The technology we're going to be talking about today is our Nozzle-Less Ultrasonic spray technology. We use ultrasonic energy to create the spray, and we use low pressure air or gas to shape the spray. So those two things, those two properties are not linked together. They're independent of each other. Since we have independent control over the spray velocity, we can use air directors to shape the spray and control the velocity. So what we do with this technology is, since we don't use any type of a nozzle, we use a rectangular shaped spray device, we can produce a rectangular pattern. And that's very critical for applying a uniform coating on a flat substrate, which is the case for most fuel cell applications. Again, this is high efficiency technology, similar to an ultrasonic nozzle. They're both equal efficiency in terms of minimizing the bounce back. Some pictures of an air atomizing nozzle or an ultrasonic nozzle. Typically what happens is, if you have a conical spray pattern, if you look at the coating distribution across from the center of the coating pattern applied by the nozzle, it's heavier in the middle and lighter on the edges. So a circular or conical pattern will produce that type of coating distribution. An elliptical pattern will produce a similar coating distribution with heavier coating in the middle, lighter on the edges. And then our ultrasonic spray head consists of, and I'll go into this more detail, but we make a rectangular coating pattern. And a rectangular coating pattern means that the coating pattern is more even across the width of the pattern, and then it feathers off on the edges. So you get a much more uniform spray pattern with a single pattern with the ultrasonic nozzle-free technology. So a little bit more detail about the principle of operation. We produce the spray with ultrasonic energy, and we shape the spray with low pressure air or gas flow. The coating is applied directly to the ultrasonic head has a vibrating tip, and the coating is applied directly to that vibrating tip, and the ultrasonic energy breaks the liquid up into a fine spray, and it comes off in a flat pattern, in almost like a sheet or a waterfall. And then the air directors will take and expand that spray pattern and maintain the rectangular shape, but just make it wider. Another attribute of this technology, since we don't have a nozzle or anything that it has to go through, we can turn the spray on and off instantaneously. And that is important in a production environment. So the ultrasonic head has an ultrasonic transducer, and there's no liquid passing through the ultrasonic device. We have the vibrating tip of the head, and we apply the liquid directly to that tip, and then we use low pressure air to shape the spray. So there's no type of a nozzle. The tip of the head has a rectangular shape, and the spray it produces is a rectangular shape. So the capabilities of this technology, when integrated into the proper coating system design, you can apply very, very thin coatings down to sub-micron dry coating layers with a very high transfer efficiency. And the rectangular flat pattern from anywhere from 2 millimeters wide up to 150 millimeters wide, depending upon the spray head that we're using. We have two basic model spray heads. The blade head is what we showed initially in the description. Can produce a pattern from about 25 millimeters up to about 150 millimeters. And we have another head that's a much narrower head, but that operates in two modes. It can produce a flat spray pattern up to 25 millimeters wide, but it also can produce a focused spray pattern down to about 2 millimeters in diameter. So it can actually do a circular focus pattern and a wide pattern with the same head, and all the parameters, including going back and forth between the spray patterns, are controlled by the machine. So this is a diagram of the ILDS head. Again, we have a vibrating spray tip in which we feed the coating liquid directly to the tip, and we have an air director that can make a wide pattern or another air director that can make a narrow pattern. Again, the blade head, same basic concept. The liquid is fed externally to the vibrating tip, except this head just makes a wider spray pattern. For different applications, we have different heads available, different ultrasonic frequencies between the blade head and the ILDS head. Typically, 45 and 60 kilohertz are the frequencies that we make the heads. However, in most cases, for fuel cell applications, the 35 kilohertz heads are what's used. We really don't have a single customer using anything else. Just general, with ultrasonics, the types of liquids that can be sprayed are low viscosity solutions. If you have a pure solution like water or solvent or some kind of a mixture of solvent and water, you can spray a low viscosity material of 40 centipoise or less. However, we can also spray materials that have suspended particles like fuel cell materials. These materials, the viscosity measures much higher than the 40 centipoise limit, but that's because of the way viscosity is measured, not the actual viscosity that the ultrasonic head sees. The ultrasonic head just sees the carrier solvent, and the particles are entrained in each drop that's formed with the ultrasonic spray. So, as I mentioned before, we can spray, depending on the type of material, we can spray materials with up to 50% solids loading in the carrier solvent. And that includes materials like ceramic slurries, it can be silver inks, it can be aluminum, different types of materials can be sprayed up to that level. And then just general coatings like urethanes and acrylics, photoresist, solder masks, fluxes, etc. can be sprayed with ultrasonic technology. So basically the mechanism, and it's a short time period here, so I really can't go into much detail about the exact mechanism of ultrasonic spray. But basically you have a vibrating surface, the atomizing tip of the spray head, what we call the spray forming tip. And we apply the liquid to that tip, and a film of liquid is formed on that vibrating surface. And the ultrasonic energy forms capillary waves in that thin film, and it breaks it up into small drops, and it propels it away from the head in the form of a spray. The drop size generally with ultrasonics, the higher the frequency, the smaller the drops. However, if you can also adjust the amplitude of vibration of the ultrasonic head. It's like a stereo that's playing a single note that you can't hear, but you can turn the volume up louder, turn it down, and you can increase or decrease the amplitude of vibration and therefore influence the drop size of the coating that you're spraying as well. So generally, the larger the amplitude, the bigger the drops. Also, the higher the liquid flow rate going to the atomizing surface, the bigger the drops. So there's many different factors that influence the drop size of an ultrasonic spray device. And this basically just illustrates an ultrasonic frequency, but changing the amplitude. So you have a low amplitude or a medium or a high amplitude of vibration for the same frequency. So once you form the spray with ultrasonic energy, you need to actually shape it and give it some velocity, because the spray by itself is very soft. It doesn't really do very much for you. If you were to see it spray, it would drift with every little air current. So what we need to do is we need to shape the spray, and we need to accelerate the drops. You don't need to accelerate them very much, but you need to accelerate them so that they have some shape. So what we do is we take that spray and we expand the drops. So all the drops are moving away from each other from the spray head, so they don't collide back with each other and get bigger. They maintain the size that they were produced ultrasonically, because we're expanding the spray with our air director. And typically we can expand the spray up to 10 times the width of the spray tip. So to do this, we use the directed air streams that I've described, and we'll show you a little bit more detail about this. So our real objective here is not to make a spray, it's to make a uniform coating on a substrate. That's what everybody's concerned about. If you're doing combustion or something else, you might be concerned about making a spray, but ultimately you're concerned about the coating on the substrate and making a uniform coating on the substrate. So typically when you're dealing with a flat substrate and you want a uniform coating, the more uniform the spray pattern is, the better the coating uniformity is going to be. So a flat rectangular pattern is ideal for applying a uniform coating to a flat substrate. Conical or elliptical patterns produce more coating in the middle, less on the edges, and it's much more difficult to get a uniform coating with those types of patterns. The other thing that matters is the drop size distribution within the pattern. So you have a spray pattern, and if your drops are bigger and smaller in certain areas, you're going to have heavier coatings and lighter coatings. So the key thing is to have a more uniform drop size distribution within the coating pattern itself. Since our ultrasonic head can generate a very uniform drop distribution, as long as we can shape the spray and maintain that drop distribution, we can also increase the uniformity of the coating on the substrate. And this really matters when you're trying to put down very thin coatings. So when you have a coating device and you have a substrate to coat, there are many different ways of applying the coating for what we call the coating recipe. One way is to apply a single pass, which means a series of spray applications that are right next to each other, and try to make a uniform coating that way. Another way is to overlap the coating application. So if your width of your spray pattern is 100 millimeters, maybe you take a pass every 50 millimeters. Or another one is what we typically do with the fuel cell, is actually to interleave the patterns and also do a crosshatch, and you'll see an example of that. So ideally, our spray device makes a pattern like that, which would make a rectangular coating on the substrate. So again, if you're comparing a rectangular spray pattern versus any type of a spray nozzle, you're going to have a much more uniform distribution across the width of the pattern, and any type of a spray nozzle is going to have more of a parabolic shape with more in the center and less on the edges. So basically the idea to get a uniform coating distribution, you need to have a uniform rectangular pattern plus a uniform drop size distribution plus the correct recipe, the correct application pattern. So this video is really for solar wafers, but it gives you a clear illustration of the shape of the spray pattern. So you can start the video. So you'll see the blade head, and it's going to coat the solar wafers, and you see the flat pattern. And you can, there's a few more times that you can see it. So if you watch the edge of the pattern, you'll see that it's flat and rectangular. And this is an example of doing the same thing but overlapping the pattern a little bit. Different application, but it's just to show the spray pattern shape. So an example of a single pass coating recipe, if you had a spray pattern that was 100 millimeters wide, you would apply a coating every 100 millimeters. And that's a way to do it. We typically don't do that, but that's a way of applying coating to a substrate. Another way that we're going to show you for fuel cell application is to use the crosshatched interleaved method. Since we have a rectangular pattern, we find that in order to make a uniform pattern, you can spray in one direction and coat your substrate. You can rotate the head 90 degrees and spray the other direction, rotate it back, and spray another set of patterns that are halfway in between these patterns, rotate it, and put another set halfway in between these patterns. And that would be a typical layer that we would apply for fuel cell. And the idea here is to minimize any variation in the coating that is applied to the fuel cell layer. Because the key thing is you have to have a very uniform, very smooth layer and no defects. And so this method produces the best results. And since we have a rectangular pattern, we can go back and forth and do a crosshatch. If we had a circular pattern, it really wouldn't do us any good to go back to, a crosshatch. You could do it, but a circle is a circle. So this is a quick video that shows the crosshatch method. This is a dummy fuel cell ink just spraying on white paper. It's not really a fuel cell, but it shows the application process. You can turn the video on. And this is with our ILDS head. You can still notice that it has a rectangular spray pattern, but it's much smaller than the pattern you saw before. And we rotate 90 degrees and do a crosshatch. So the idea is we build up many layers until we get to the desired thickness. Okay. One thing that allows us to do that in all of our machines, we have a rotate mechanism that rotates the head very quickly. So in a production situation, it's just very fast to do spray in one direction, then rotate and spray in the other direction. Another important aspect of handling these suspended particles is the liquid delivery system, the way that we handle the liquid. Many of these liquids, as I mentioned, are suspensions or slurries, and they tend to settle out after a few minutes unless they're kept properly mixed. So typically, the types of liquid delivery systems that you have are maybe a pressurized system or a pump-based system. But in order to meet the requirements of fuel cell applications, we have to keep the material mixed and also deliver it at a very precise flow rate to the spray head. So we developed a precision metering pump that uses a piston and a cylinder, like a syringe pump. But inside the syringe pump, it has an agitator. It has a magnetically driven stirring mechanism, so it can stir in one direction or both directions and agitate the material and keep it mixed. The piston is driven by a servo motor, so we have closed loop control over the flow rate, and you can control it very precisely. We have the internal mix piston, and we also can have a recirculating system if we need to for this type of a liquid delivery system. So We basically have two different versions of this, what we call our PMP 100, which is a single pump 100 milliliter syringe with integrated stirring, and it can automatically refill from a holding reservoir that has stirring as well, so the coating's mixed. Or we have our PMP 200, which will operate continuously, so as one pump empties, the other one is filling. Or it can be operated such that it can recirculate the liquid and keep everything always running through the line so that nothing ever settles out. So that typically is the system that's used in production applications. A schematic of the PMP 100 is here. You have the syringe, you have the servo drive for the piston, you have a holding reservoir with stirring, and then you have a motor and a magnetic stir bar to keep the coating mixed. Wow. I have to go faster. So another aspect is to keep the substrate fixtured properly, and for that we have a heated vacuum plate, porous vacuum plate. So the substrate can be put in place and held so it doesn't potato chip or bubble. Typically what we use is that crosshatch method to build the required coating density on the membrane. One important fact for ultrasonic spraying is that what we're doing is we're spraying the carrier solvent, and the particles go along for the ride inside the drops. So depending upon the particle size, which typically the maximum particle size is up in the double-digit micron size, when you're spraying it, the particles go, they're in the drops going along for the ride. If you use, so typically we use 35 kilohertz, which is a very good basic frequency for producing the right size drops, is also producing the right flow rate range. If we go to higher frequencies, we limit our energy, we limit the drop size, and therefore we limit the amount that we can spray, or even the particle size that we can spray. I think I mentioned most of this before about putting down a uniform layer. If you have a problem, if you're not doing it correctly, you're going to end up with a non-uniform layer. Layer applied too wet or too thick, it's going to cause defects in the coating. You can turn this one on. This is an example of our blade head just coating a larger area. So for a production application, you could coat a much larger area much faster with a blade head. You can see the rectangular spray pattern. So we can stop it. I'm going to go. And we have basically 3 different machines for different applications. One, our Prism benchtop machine for R&D type applications. It's an XYZ system. It can have any of our ultrasonic head technology and any of our liquid delivery system technology, but for a lab scale environment. Our Prism system, which is more of a medium size and for R&D and low volume production applications. And then our Max 800, which is a large scale system for high volume fuel cell or other manufacturing applications. And we actually do have customers using this machine for fuel cell manufacture in high volumes. I think I got it here. So any questions?
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Bin ich dran? So, thank you very much for this interesting and impressive presentation. So, now you in the audience have the opportunity to ask here some question or do some remarks. Are here any? Not yet. Not yet. Okay. Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Mr. Erickson. So, if there are some question in the future, or do you like to discuss any topic with him, please follow him to the booth D60/1. He's the whole week here at the booth.
I am here just today and tomorrow.
Today and tomorrow at the booth.
But my colleague Bob will be here on Thursday as well, so he'll be able to answer questions.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Erickson. So, please sit down as well. Big hands for you. So in a few minutes, the next presentation will give in here. And the topic is about power to gas, renewable energy storage, electrical fluctuation compensation, security, and network stability. Thank you very much.